The jeers from the soldiers cut through the sterile air of the recovery ward like knives. "Hey, fairy nurse, don't drop the captain with your limp wrists," one laughed, his buddies joining in. But as Ethan Harper adjusted the four-drip for the unconscious man on the gurney, he had no idea that this patient would force everyone to confront truths they wished to ignore. Ethan kept his face neutral, the way he had learned to after years in this environment. At 28, he was a registered nurse at Pacific Military Medical Center in San Diego, one of the few openly gay men working the trauma wards. His colleagues tolerated him on good days and mocked him on bad ones. The soldiers who came through were often worse, fresh from deployments where "don't ask, don't tell" might have ended on paper but lived on in the barracks. "Make sure he gets the best care," Sergeant Klein growled, crossing his thick arms as he glared at Ethan. "Captain Reynolds is a hero. Last thing he needs is some." He let the word hang, but the sneer finished it. Ethan nodded once and continued his work. Captain Marcus Reynolds had been medevaced after his convoy hit an IED outside Kandahar. Shrapnel wounds to the chest and leg, concussion, significant blood loss. The man was stable now but still critical. Ethan checked the monitors, adjusted the oxygen, and noted the vitals in the chart. The soldiers eventually filed out for the night, leaving the ward quieter. Hours later, as the shift dragged on, Ethan sat beside the bed updating notes under the soft glow of the bedside lamp. Reynolds stirred. His eyes, hazel and sharp even through the haze of painkillers, opened and locked onto Ethan's face. The captain's brow furrowed. "You," he rasped, voice rough from the breathing tube he'd only recently lost. "I know you." Ethan offered a small, professional smile. "You're in good hands, Captain. Just rest. The meds can cause confusion." "No." Reynolds tried to push himself up, wincing. His hand shot out and gripped Ethan's wrist with surprising strength. "Afghanistan. 6 years ago. The ambush at the pass. You were the medic. You dragged me out of that burning Humvee while bullets were still flying. Harper. Ethan Harper." The name hit Ethan like a slap. He froze, staring down at the man he had tried to forget. Back then he had been Specialist Harper, combat medic with the 82nd Airborne. He had saved Reynolds' life that night, staunching arterial bleeding under fire, carrying him to safety on his back for nearly a mile until extraction arrived. 2 weeks later, after relentless harassment from his own platoon about his sexuality, Ethan had requested discharge. He left the army broken but alive. Now here was the ghost of that night, lying in his ward. Yeah, that was me," Ethan said quietly, pulling his hand back gently. "Small world, Captain." Reynolds' eyes didn't leave his face. For the first time in years, someone looked at him not with mockery, but with raw recognition. "You saved my life. I never got to thank you properly. They said you rotated out right after." Ethan swallowed hard. "Something like that." He stood, needing distance. "You should rest. I'll get the doctor to check on you." As he walked away, his heart pounded. The past he had buried was suddenly in the next bed, and the soldiers who had spent the evening laughing at him were the same ones who had once served under this captain. The mockery that had felt routine now carried a new weight. What would happen when Reynolds learned how they treated the man who had pulled him from the flames? The night shift continued, but Ethan's mind was no longer on the charts. Old memories flooded back. The dust and blood of that Afghan pass, the weight of Reynolds on his shoulders, the later nights of slurs and threats in the barracks that finally broke him. He had rebuilt his life here in San Diego, far from combat but not from judgment. His father, a retired Marine, still refused to speak to him. His mother called weakly, voice tired from playing peacemaker. Ethan had learned to survive on quiet competence and the occasional kind word from patients. By morning, word had spread through the ward. Captain Reynolds was awake and asking for the nurse who saved me in Afghanistan. The soldiers returned, their laughter quieter now, replaced by curious glances. Sergeant Klein hovered near the door, arms crossed, clearly uneasy. Ethan entered the room to change Reynolds' dressings. The captain watched him closely. "You left the army after that tour," Reynolds said. It wasn't a question. Ethan kept his hands steady as he worked. "Medical discharge. Things got complicated." "Complicated how?" Reynolds pressed, voice low. Ethan met his eyes. "The kind of complicated that happens when you're the only openly gay soldier in a platoon that doesn't want you there. Death threats in your bunk. Equipment accidentally damaged. I chose to live." Reynolds was silent for a long moment. "I didn't know. You were in and out of consciousness. Then they shipped you home." Ethan taped the fresh bandage. "It's in the past." But it wasn't. Not anymore. As Ethan left the room, he heard Klein mutter to another soldier, "Great. Now the captain's buddying up with the ferry. This ought to be interesting." Ethan's stomach tightened. The recognition that had felt like a gift was already becoming a complication. And the day had only just begun. Captain Reynolds improved quickly over the next 48 hours. His color returned, and the doctors reduced his pain meds. He asked for Ethan by name every shift, requesting updates even when other nurses were available. The staff noticed. So did the soldiers. "Captain's got a favorite," one private joked in the hallway, loud enough for Ethan to hear. "Wonder what his girlfriend back home would think." Ethan ignored it and kept moving. Inside, though, the comments stung more than usual. Reynolds' recognition had cracked open a door he had nailed shut. Gratitude from the man whose life he had saved felt good, dangerously good. But Ethan knew better than to hope for real change. Military culture didn't bend easily. On the third morning, Reynolds was sitting up when Ethan arrived with fresh linens. "Harper, sit for a minute. That's an order, even if you're not in uniform anymore." Ethan hesitated, then pulled up a chair. "I'm on duty, Captain. 5 minutes." Reynolds studied him. "I owe you more than 5 minutes. You carried me out of hell. I wrote letters trying to find you after I recovered. But the army said you'd left. I figured you didn't want to be found." "I didn't." Ethan folded his hands in his lap. "Coming out in the service was a mistake. I thought things were changing. They weren't. Not fast enough for me." Reynolds nodded slowly. "I heard stories. Never thought it would hit someone who saved my life." He paused. "My unit. They can be rough. Klein and the others. If they're giving you trouble." "They've been giving me trouble since day one," Ethan interrupted gently. "It's not new. You don't have to fix it." "But I do." Reynolds' voice hardened. "You saved me twice now. Once in Afghanistan, once by keeping me alive here. The least I can do is make sure they treat you with respect." Ethan smiled faintly. "Respect isn't given just because you order it, Captain. Especially not when the reason is me being gay." The word hung between them. Reynolds didn't flinch. "Then maybe it's time I reminded them who they're talking to." Before Ethan could respond, the door opened. Sergeant Klein and 2 others entered, carrying coffee and magazines for their captain. They stopped short at the sight of Ethan sitting beside the bed. "Everything okay, sir?" Klein asked, eyes narrowing at Ethan. "Perfect," Reynolds said. "Harper here was just telling me how well the team's been treating him. Real professional." Klein's jaw tightened. "Of course, sir." The soldiers left shortly after, but the tension lingered. Ethan stood to leave. "You didn't have to do that." "I meant it." Reynolds reached out, briefly touching Ethan's arm. The contact was brief, professional, but it sent an unexpected warmth through Ethan. "Stay safe out there, Harper." That afternoon, the whispers grew louder. One nurse, Carla, pulled Ethan aside in the break room. "Be careful. Klein's been talking to the charge nurse. Says the captain's acting strange since he woke up. Asking about you all the time." Ethan sighed. "I'm just doing my job." Carla lowered her voice. "Some people don't see it that way, especially not with a decorated captain. You know how it looks." Ethan's chest tightened. He knew exactly how it looked to them. The gay nurse cozying up to the wounded hero. Rumors were already forming, and they wouldn't be kind. That night, as Ethan prepared to leave, Reynolds called him back into the room. My parents are flying in tomorrow. My father, he's old school, retired colonel, expects certain things. But I want them to meet the man who saved my life. Both times. Ethan hesitated. I'm not sure that's a good idea. It's the right one. Reynolds' eyes held his. You've been carrying this alone long enough. Let someone stand with you for once. Ethan left the hospital under the San Diego stars, mind racing. Gratitude was turning into something more complicated. And with Reynolds' family arriving, the fragile peace was about to shatter. The next morning brought Colonel Robert Reynolds and his wife Margaret to the ward. They were exactly as Ethan had pictured. The colonel tall and stern in a crisp polo, his wife elegant and reserved. They carried flowers and the weight of expectation. Captain Reynolds introduced Ethan immediately. This is Ethan Harper, the medic who pulled me out in Afghanistan. He's the reason I'm here to greet you. The colonel's handshake was firm, appraising. We owe you a debt, son. Marcus has told us the story many times. Margaret smiled warmly. Thank you for saving our boy. Twice now, it seems. Ethan nodded politely, but he felt the colonel's eyes linger. Later, when Ethan stepped out to give the family privacy, he overheard fragments through the partially open door. Seems competent enough, the colonel was saying. But the staff mentioned he's outspoken about certain things. You know what I mean? Marcus' voice stayed even. He's a damn good nurse, Dad. And a better man than most I've served with. The conversation shifted, but the undercurrent was clear. Ethan's sexuality was already a topic. His own family history echoed in his mind. His father, a Vietnam-era Marine, had stopped speaking to him the day Ethan came out. No son of mine, he had said. The memory still burned. Later that afternoon, a new complication arrived. Lieutenant Emily Grant, Marcus' girlfriend of 2 years, flew in from Virginia. She was polished, kind, and clearly devoted. She kissed Marcus on the cheek and settled beside the bed, chatting easily with his parents. Ethan walked in to check vitals and felt the room shift. Emily glanced at him with polite curiosity. You must be Ethan. Marcus can't stop talking about you. Nice to meet you, Ethan said, keeping his tone professional. Inside, something twisted. He had no claim on Marcus. The man had a life, a future planned with this woman. Yet the late-night conversations they'd shared, the way Marcus looked at him now, suggested cracks in that future. Klein chose that moment to enter with more visitors from the unit. The mockery had quieted around Marcus, but it hadn't vanished. One soldier muttered just loud enough, Captain's got quite the fan club these days. Marcus heard it. Sergeant, a word outside. The two men stepped into the hallway. Ethan couldn't hear the full exchange, but Marcus' voice carried authority. When they returned, Klein's face was red and he avoided Ethan's eyes. That evening, after the visitors left, Marcus asked Ethan to stay late. Emily's great. She's been there for me through a lot. But talking to you, it's different. You understand the cost. The things we saw over there. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed. I do. But you have a life waiting for you, Captain. A family that expects the traditional path. I won't be the reason that falls apart. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Maybe the traditional path isn't the only right one. Maybe saving my life twice means I owe it to myself to figure out what I really want. The words hung heavy. Ethan stood, heart racing. Be careful what you wish for. The price is higher than you think. As he left, Carla caught him in the corridor. The charge nurse wants to see you tomorrow. Klein filed a complaint. Said you're spending too much personal time with the captain. Inappropriate. Ethan's stomach dropped. The betrayal had begun. The meeting with the charge nurse was as unpleasant as expected. We have concerns about boundaries, Harper, she said, not meeting his eyes. Captain Reynolds is a high-profile patient. His family has influence. We can't have rumors. Rumors started by the same soldiers who mock me daily, Ethan replied evenly. I'm doing my job. She sighed. Just keep it professional. For your sake. Word spread quickly. By afternoon, the ward buzzed. Emily visited again and pulled Ethan aside in the hallway. Marcus speaks so highly of you. I appreciate everything you've done. But he's been through a lot. Please don't confuse gratitude with anything else. The words stung because they echoed Ethan's own fears. I would never, he said. He's your fiancé. She nodded, but her eyes were troubled. He's changing. The deployment, the injury, and now this recognition of you. It's stirring things up. That night, Marcus was restless. Emily talked to you, didn't she? She means well, but she doesn't understand what it was like over there. What you did for me. Ethan checked the monitors. She loves you. Your parents love you. The army expects certain things from a captain on the rise. I won't be the one who costs you all of that. Marcus grabbed his hand. What if I don't want the version of me that ignores what I feel when you walk into the room? What if saving my life means I finally have to be honest? The touch lingered. Ethan's breath caught. This was the line they had been dancing around. Gratitude turning into something deeper, more dangerous. You don't know what you're saying. The world out there isn't ready. Your father isn't ready. Then maybe it's time to find out who is. Marcus' voice was fierce. I almost died. Twice. I'm done living for other people's expectations. Before Ethan could respond, the door burst open. Klein stood there, face flushed. Sir, your father wants to speak with you. Alone. The colonel entered moments later, dismissing Ethan with a curt nod. Ethan waited in the hallway, heart pounding. Raised voices leaked through the door. That nurse. People are talking, Marcus. About the time you spend together. The way you look at him. This isn't you. It is me, Dad. The me that survived because of him. The argument escalated. Ethan walked away, unable to listen. In the break room, Carla found him. Klein told the colonel everything. The complaints, the rumors. They're talking about reassigning you to another ward. Ethan sat heavily. I saved his life. Both times. And this is the thanks I get. Carla squeezed his shoulder. Some people only see what they want to see. The gay nurse. Not the hero. The next morning brought the breaking point. The colonel confronted Ethan directly in the corridor. My son owes you his life. I acknowledge that. But I won't let some personal confusion derail his future. Stay away from him, Harper. For everyone's sake. Ethan met the older man's eyes. I never asked for anything except to do my job. But if your son wants to thank the man who dragged him out of a burning vehicle, maybe you should ask why that bothers you so much. The colonel stiffened. Watch yourself. Ethan walked away, hands shaking. The confrontation had cost him. But for the first time in years, he felt something like hope mixed with terror. Marcus recovered enough to walk short distances with assistance. He used those moments to seek Ethan out, ignoring the stares. One afternoon in the physical therapy room, he pulled Ethan into a quiet corner. I told my father the truth. Not everything, but enough. That I feel something for you that goes beyond gratitude. That the army taught me to value courage. And you've shown more of it than most. Ethan's heart raced. And what did he say? Marcus looked down. He said I'd regret it. That it would ruin my career. That Emily deserves better. He paused. I broke things off with her this morning. She cried, but she said she suspected. She's flying home tonight. The sacrifice hit Ethan hard. You didn't have to do that. I did. Marcus stepped closer. You saved me in Afghanistan when I was bleeding out. You saved me here by reminding me what matters. I can't go back to pretending. News of the breakup spread like wildfire. The soldiers' attitudes shifted again. some with resentment, others with reluctant respect. Klein cornered Ethan in the supply room. "You happy now? Captain threw away a good woman for you. Hope it was worth it." Ethan faced him. "I didn't ask him to, but maybe he finally saw that respect isn't about who you love. It's about who you are when it counts." Klein left without another word, but the damage was done. That evening, the charge nurse called Ethan in again. "There's a formal complaint from the family. They're influential. The hospital is considering a transfer. Or worse." Ethan felt the walls closing in. Everything he had built, the careful life after the army, was crumbling because one man had chosen to see him fully. Marcus found him after the meeting. "I'll fix this. I'll talk to the hospital administration. My record carries weight." "Don't," Ethan said quietly. "You've already paid enough. Your family, your career path. I won't let you lose more." Marcus took his hands. What if losing those things means gaining something real? Something worth the fight? In that moment, Ethan saw the depth of Marcus' awakening. The captain who had once led men into battle was now fighting a different war. One inside himself and against the world that had shaped him. The tension that had built for weeks crested here, in the quiet hallway of the hospital where their lives had collided again. The final confrontation came 2 days later. Marcus was scheduled for discharge the following week. His father arrived with a hospital administrator and the charge nurse. They gathered in Marcus' room. "Son, this has gone far enough," the colonel said. "The hospital agrees a change is best. Harper will be reassigned. You can focus on recovery and your future." Marcus stood slowly, still using a cane but steady. "No, Ethan stays. If anyone leaves, it's me signing out against medical advice." The room erupted. The administrator sputtered about protocol. The colonel turned red. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you." "I'm choosing to build something honest," Marcus replied. He looked at Ethan, who stood quietly by the door. "This man saved my life twice. He endured mockery and threats both in uniform and out of it. If the price of my honesty is disappointing you, then I accept that price. But I won't accept a world that punishes him for it." Ethan stepped forward. "Captain, you don't have to." "I do." Marcus turned to his father. "I love you, Dad, but I can't live your version of my life anymore. Not after everything." The colonel stared for a long moment, then walked out without another word. The administrator followed, muttering about paperwork. The charge nurse gave Ethan a long look before leaving. In the sudden quiet, Marcus turned to Ethan. "I don't know what comes next. My career might stall. My family might take time to understand. But I know I want to figure it out with you. If you'll have me." Ethan felt tears prick his eyes. The journey from battlefield medic to mocked nurse to this moment had cost them both dearly. The price has been high, but maybe it's worth it. They stood together as the sun set over San Diego, the hospital ward fading into the background. The future was uncertain, filled with more fights against prejudice and family wounds that might never fully heal. But for the first time, neither faced it alone. In the end, was Captain Reynolds right to risk his career, family ties, and reputation for the man society told him to reject? Or did he betray the very duty and traditions that had defined his life?